Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Crypto Cresties. I figured it was about time that I started a YouTube channel, so here I am. In this first video, I just wanted to introduce myself, explain a little bit about what Crypto Cresties is, and also what I plan to make this channel about. So let's dig in. Okay, for starters, my name is Ashley. Very nice to meet all of you. I got my first Crested Gecko back in, let's see, the fall of 2022. So really not that long ago, just a little over a year ago. And you know what? I should show you what he looks like. Okay, so this, if I can get him to focus, this is Luxo. This was the very first Crested Gecko I ever purchased. And when I got him, he was only about 4 grams. I think he's pushing 30 grams now, but I don't actually remember. But this is him. He's a sweetheart. Look at that adorable face. How could you not love that adorable face? Yeah, that's Lux. He's not fired up right now. He's definitely not fired up at all. I caught him while he was sleeping, so he's probably not happy with me at the moment. But this is Lux, or Luxo. I got him from the Reptile Nation show that came to Atlanta. And I bought him from, where did I get you from? I think it was Sticky Foot Creations or Sticky Feet Creations. I can't remember. Great people, very nice. They were just getting started out. So they had a few different geckos. This is one of the ones that I bought from them. I actually ended up going back to them and buying another one later on. But yeah, this is my very, very, very first Crested Gecko. I have raised little Luxo up from just his little 4 grams to where he is now. And I just think he's getting more and more beautiful. He's got a little bit of yellow tones on him. He's very creamy. This is what you would call a harlequin. I would even call this like an extreme harlequin, just because of how extreme the patterning is. He is such a sweetheart. I really, really like this little guy. And he's growing. He loves his bugs, so that's good. So I'm going to put him away. Okay, so just a general history of Crypto Cresties. While I was at that very, very first Reptile Expo show, I bought Luxo. And then I started thinking, I'm like, you know, these little guys are really cool. And at that show, I actually envisioned my whole breeding operation. Like immediately, like as I was purchasing him, even prior to buying him, I was walking around and I was thinking, you know, I could totally breed these guys and do expos like this or sell them online or whatever. I started thinking about it and I'm like, well, if I'm going to do that, I need to come up with a business name. I need to have a cool, catchy name. And my other hobby of interest, if you want to call it a hobby, is cryptocurrency. I'm really into cryptocurrency. I'm an advocate for it. I am not a Bitcoin millionaire, so don't ask or assume. I wish I were. I knew of Bitcoin in 2009 when it was created, and back then I thought it was just a little gaming token. So I did not attempt to get any back then. Plus back then you couldn't buy it, you had to mine it, and it was a lot harder to get Bitcoin back then. But it was only like $1. It was actually less than $1 when I first heard about it. But oh my goodness, now, I mean, now Bitcoin's like pushing, I think 35,000 this past week, and it's topped out at like almost 70K, and I only see upside from here. I have since bought Bitcoin and sold it. I have made some profit on it, but like I said, not a Bitcoin millionaire. All that aside, I know that was a little bit of a tangent. Because I enjoy crypto and I like Crested Geckos, I came up with the name Crypto Cresties. And I do accept crypto as payment for my Crested Geckos. So that was kind of the plan all along. I'm like, you know what? I could breed them, I could sell them, and I could sell them for crypto. So I've yet for anyone to purchase them with crypto, but I think in the future, I believe in the future that someone will. That's how I have it structured. Of course, I will accept other payments as well, but Crypto Cresties is the name of the business. So that's how I got started, actually. It all started in my head, and I just grew from there. I got Luxo, and then I started doing all the research I could on Crested Geckos. So when I bought Luxo, I will admit it was a bit of an impulse buy. I went to this Reptile Expo, and on my way there, I'm like, I'm not gonna get anything, I'm not gonna get anything, I'm not gonna get anything. I hadn't been to a Reptile Expo since I was a little kid. This was my first one in like many, many years. I walk in and my face just lights up because I see all these reptiles. I'm not like the kind of person that's only into Crested Geckos. I mean, I'm sure that's pretty normal that people are into many other reptiles. I saw the snakes, I saw the turtles, everything, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, I'm not gonna buy anything, I'm not gonna buy anything, and I bought Luxo. That's how it started. I had reptiles when I was a kid. A lot of them were reptiles that I caught, like little green anoles. I did have a black rat snake that was caught. Turtles, etc. I also had a Jackson's chameleon and an iguana, which I will never have again. But the chameleon was really cool, but I knew nothing about care when I was a kid. Honestly, when I was a kid, not to date myself, but we really didn't have a whole lot of information on the internet yet. I couldn't just Google how to take care of a Jackson's chameleon. I actually had to go to the library and check out books. Even that was pretty limited. Like, there was a lot that we didn't know back then. Unfortunately, the Jackson's chameleon, well, he lasted a little while, but he didn't last very long. I'd say maybe a year. Even back then, like, a lot of them weren't captive bred, they were wild caught. So a lot of wild caught reptiles don't fare too well. That's something to keep in mind, by the way. If you ever see anything that's wild caught, maybe don't purchase it. Unless you absolutely know what you're doing and you're like an expert in the field of whatever that species is. But anyway, that's another tangent. That's a little background on me. I did have reptiles as a kid. I'm just now getting back into them. I nosedived straight into Crested Geckos. Like, fast. And I found out that a lot of people do that. So I know I'm not the only one. And if you're one of these people, you are not alone. Do not worry. We like get a gecko and then we're like, oh my gosh, now I have to have every morph. And that's how I felt in the beginning. I don't feel that way now. I don't feel like I have to have every single morph now. What I will say is when I first got Luxo, I knew nothing about Crested Geckos, and he was an impulse buy. And I typically do not buy any animals without doing research first. It was kind of just jumping right in. And then so after I got him, I started doing heavy research on Crested Geckos. I decided to steer clear of Facebook because of a lot of the negative comments on there. There's a lot of negativity on Facebook. And I focused more on YouTube. I got on YouTube, I found Crested Gecko breeders that were well-established breeders, and I started watching all of their care videos, everything. Some of the first YouTubers that I watched were Robbie's Reptiles, Flawless Crested Geckos, Altitude Exotics, and So Stick Reptiles. So those were like my main ones that I found, and I really focused in on those. I have also found the Gecko Pod, which is hosted by Harry from Zero's Geckos and AJ from AJD Reptiles. What's awesome about the Gecko Pod is in the beginning, they kind of just have a Q&A because Harry was relatively new to the industry and AJ is a veteran. It was more of just a banter back and forth, like Harry asking some questions, AJ answering them. But then it developed into them interviewing other well-respected breeders in the industry. And that is a wealth of information I don't believe you'll find anywhere else. That's all in one spot anyway. They have interviewed so many people. I have learned so much from the Gecko Pod. It's ridiculous. Like, it is just so much information and it's so good and you can just binge on it. That is another tangent that I went off on. But that's basically how I got the knowledge that I have for the care of my Crested Geckos, is through the Gecko Pod and just watching other breeder channels. Now, with that said, there are some things that are completely wrong to do with Crested Geckos. Like, you're not going to put them on a heating pad. You do not need a heating lamp. Actually, don't use a heating lamp. It's not that you don't need one. You could kill them. You would kill them with a heating lamp. So there are some things that are like dead nose. But other things in the industry are like, some people do it, some people don't. For example, offering UVB lighting. I prefer to offer UVB lighting. It is not required for crested geckos. The reason for that is because they get a lot of their vitamin D through their diet, and that's great, but I'm also of the belief that it might improve their mood. I know it does for a lot of living things. It improves their moods. There are different reasons, but you don't have to offer UVB lighting. I choose to for the majority of mine. I actually do not have UVB lighting for all of my crested geckos. I am working my way up to supplying that. Another thing about how I run my breeding program is I also offer some bioactives. Most of my breeder size males are in bioactives. I haven't put females in bioactives yet because females lay eggs, and I don't want to have to dig through an entire enclosure to find their eggs. So the females are actually in like a bin type situation with lay boxes. It's not necessarily my preferred method, and I am thinking of ways to offer them bioactives as well, but it's my current setup. Other than that, just to kind of give you a rundown of how I take care of my crested geckos, I also give them live bugs once a week, in addition to their crested gecko diet. So crested geckos eat a crested gecko diet that's been prepared by a company like Pangea, Reptile, those companies, and other companies. There's a few other ones. There's BPZ. So yeah, I offer mine Pangea and Reptile mostly. I also give them some PBZ, melanistic, and color bomb. I like to offer them those as well. So all it is a powder that you mix with water, and they eat it. It's pretty simple. So they get that twice a week, and then they get a bug feeding once a week. And the bugs that I choose to feed them are either going to be crickets, mealworms, or red runner roaches. Yeah. I am breeding my own red runner roaches. I never thought I would say that. Never in a million years did I think I would say that I had a colony of roaches that I was raising. But now I do, and they love them. So I will keep doing it. They're really easy to breed because they're roaches, and they're pretty good at surviving because they're roaches. So yeah. With that said, I don't like putting the roaches in the bioactives because I'm afraid that they will somehow get out, because I've noticed that my isopods have escaped some of these enclosures. So if an isopod can escape, gosh darn it, a roach can escape. So I don't put any roaches in my bioactives. I only put roaches in my baby bins, which you see back here. That's the only place that I will actually dump the roaches. Other than that, so these are my juveniles here, with UVB lighting, by the way. The baby bins, they don't get any UVB. It was just easier to have a rack system with them, so that's what I have. These guys are also juveniles right here. I don't put roaches in these because they also have crevices and areas where they could escape. So for my juveniles, I will either let them come out and get in a bin that has roaches and let them feast, or if they don't want to do that, because some of them don't. Some of them prefer to eat in their enclosure, and if they're outside of their enclosure, they'll get scared and they won't do anything. So for those guys, they get crickets inside of their enclosure, because I honestly don't care if a cricket gets loose. I mean, it might be annoying because it's loud, but other than that, I'm not worried about crickets. There are some of these juveniles though that will gladly hop out of their enclosure here straight into a bin that I have of roaches, and we'll just start feasting. It just depends on the personality of the gecko, and yes, they do have personalities. I also provide water bowls to all of my geckos. Every single gecko has a water bowl that gets fresh water in it. I truly believe that providing fresh water for them to drink out of is the best way to go, because it allows them to drink whenever they want to. Crested geckos will drink out of a water bowl. Some people will say, oh, you just spray their bin and they just drink the water off the walls. Yeah, they'll do that too, but they will drink out of a water bowl. In addition to that, all my enclosures do get sprayed with water on a regular basis. I don't do it every single day though, because I live in Georgia and it's very humid in Georgia. They don't really require being sprayed all that often, especially in the summertime. Now in the wintertime, I will spray more often because the heat dries it out, dries everything out. So they will get sprayed more often in the wintertime, but it kind of just depends on if I noticed if the enclosure has dried out or not. If it hasn't dried out, then I'm not going to spray it. So Crested Geckos need a period of humidity, preferably in the evening time, and then they need a dry out period as well. Otherwise, if they don't have the humidity, they will have problems shedding, and if you don't allow them to have a dry out period, they will have respiratory problems. I do have one of those, and I don't know if you can see it. It's one of those Govee, like, thermometer things, temperature gauges, that tells you what the temperature is, but it also tells you humidity in the enclosure. I keep it inside the enclosure, so I can kind of monitor the humidity of the baby bins. Because I found that the baby bins hold humidity a lot more than, like, say, one of these enclosures. Something like one of these enclosures I will probably spray every single day because they do dry out pretty quick. But the baby bins, yeah, they don't dry out so quick. I also supply cork bark in every single enclosure because that helps with shedding as well. They can rub up against it, and it's really good for them. In addition to that, as far as substrate goes, in these bins that are not bioactive, I use a craft paper that I put on the bottom. I prefer that over paper towels. A lot of people use paper towels, but I prefer the craft paper because whenever they're chasing their prey, like whether it's a cricket or whatever, they won't get a mouthful of paper towel in their mouth if they miss and they bite down. So the paper doesn't like get caught in their mouths like a paper towel would. And I already went over the UVB lighting. Like I said, I don't offer it to everybody, but I am working on offering it to at least all the juveniles and adults. It takes time. Reptiles can be expensive. If you're new to reptiles, you'll learn. If you've been with reptiles for a while now, you already know that reptiles are expensive. Between the lighting, everything, they can be costly. So I am slowly working my way up to providing all the UVB that I would like to provide. And I'm also slowly working up to having more bioactive enclosures. And that's something else that I will probably go over on this channel, is how to have a lot of Crested Geckos on a budget. So a lot of breeders get into this because they're like, well, it doesn't take a whole lot to take care of a Crested Gecko, and it doesn't. The Crested Gecko diet is pretty cheap as far as like how much a Crested Gecko will eat in a year. It doesn't come out to be a whole lot of money for the Crested Gecko. I mean, you might, maybe, spend $1 a month on food for one gecko. I might even be overshooting that, actually. It might be less than that. And I need to do, that will probably be an episode. I will do a calculation of like how much diet I use per gecko and like lay out the cost. So that will be a future episode. Geckos in general aren't that expensive, but you got to get things going. Like the initial cost is expensive. If you want to go bioactive, it can get really expensive, especially depending on what kind of enclosure you use. So what I'm wanting to do is show some ways of keeping Crested Geckos on a budget, and maybe even with bioactives and all the UVB and everything, but how to do it on a budget. So that's something in the future that I'd like to show on this channel. I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place, but basically that's what Crypto Cresties is. I have about, I actually don't know how many Crested Geckos I have right now. I'm thinking it's around 50, give or take. Probably more give than take. Yeah, if you ask any Crested Gecko owner how many geckos they have, most of the time they're not going to know the answer. And it's not that they're BSing you, they actually don't know how many they have. It's because we're constantly buying or trading or selling, and so you kind of just lose count of the number. But yeah, so for future episodes on this channel, I would like to talk about the care of geckos, the breeding, taking care of hatchlings. I want to go over the care aspect of it, but I also want to go over like the morphs and everything like that. Like, what morph do you have? Like, if you went to a show and you brought back a Crested Gecko and they didn't tell you what morph it was, then like, I hope I can provide some videos showing various morphs. Granted, I don't have every single morph on the planet, but I do have a lot. Hopefully I can show you guys some morphs, and you can learn a little bit. Other than that, I would like to show some budget-friendly ways to keep crested geckos, to breed crested geckos. And so yeah, so stay tuned for future episodes. I guess this first one was a little longer than I expected it to be, but basically that's the rundown of how I care for my crested geckos. I am always learning myself. I have been in this for a little over a year. All the crested geckos that I have right now, I did not produce. I haven't actually produced any myself. I did start a pairing this past year, but they were both virgins, so I do have 2 eggs incubating from that pairing. I don't know if they're going to hatch or not, because that female was also laying Partho eggs, so those could just be more Partho eggs, and a lot of Partho eggs don't make it. I'm letting them incubate, and we're going to see what happens. Other than that, all the geckos that I have currently, I bought. I have no idea how much money I spent. That is a number that I keep telling myself I'm going to add up, and I just have not done that yet. So, anyway, I will introduce you to some more of my geckos in future episodes, but for this episode, I just wanted to give a rundown of how I run things here at Crypto Cresties, and also what I have planned for the future of this channel. I am mostly running Crypto Cresties by myself, but my fiance Andrew does help me out from time to time when he can, and I know that he probably won't be on the camera, so you may not be seeing him, but you might see him at some reptile expos with me. So that's who the guy is that's walking around with me, if you ever see a guy walking around with me with a Crypto Cresties shirt on. He is helping with the business, but he is more of a behind the scenes kind of guy. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there before I said goodbye for the evening. All right, well, that is it for the very first episode of Crypto Cresties. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you all. If you don't mind, give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, and subscribe if you are not subscribed yet and you want to learn more about crested geckos and about Crypto Cresties, and maybe you want to see what geckos I have available in the future. But I'm hoping that this channel will offer some value to everyone, and I look forward to seeing you all at an expo in the near future.